Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is Nino Davi. Nino is a lover of all things outdoors, as am I. Hunting, fishing advocate. He's investing in commercial real estate since 2013. Has over a $5 million portfolio. He loves finding value in properties and putting deals together. W-2 employer is an aerospace and defense Navy intelligence analyst vet. So quite the broad range of skills and interests there, Nino, but welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's cool. You've got quite a bit of a range of stuff that I think your job is interesting. Let's start with that. How did you get into being a Navy intelligence analyst? What is that like?
Yeah, when I joined the Navy, I joined in 2009. I tested well enough and was able to be an intel analyst. I did that for like 5-6 years. It's really cool. So I did pictures from space, satellites. I analyzed those for many years. And then when I got out, it's kind of like an easy transition to aerospace, working for some big companies, managing projects. And it kind of helps, having that defense background, working with the military, and a lot of the stuff we do now supports the military. So it was an easy transition, and it's worked out well.
Awesome. So you're working in the aerospace area. Now, aerospace, does that have anything to do with space, or is that just like, what is aerospace, like outer space, or just, and educate the unintelligent like me about that?
That is a broad term. So I'm more specifically on aircraft. There is a whole space side that I've never really dealt with.
Okay.
So I'm more of Navy, Air Force, either airplanes, somebody sitting in it, driving it, flying it, or an unmanned vehicle. I've done a lot of unmanned vehicle work.
That's awesome.
Just managing projects, people and companies developing cool technologies and kind of integrating it into a user application.
Have you felt that any of the skills that requires translates over into your investing career?
Strangely it has. So being an intel analyst in the Navy, I mean, you're looking at documents, reading, analyzing, trying to put pieces together. And when I started looking at deals and putting numbers together side by side, you kind of use a lot of those skills to analyze. And even, looking at neighborhoods, looking at areas, what the building's made out of, things like that. You kind of pay more attention to that, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's so much about, people always say like, run the numbers, analyze the deal. Like, it's so much about the underwriting. It's like, you understand that on a level like where it's literally life or death. You know what I mean? If you don't do your aerospace stuff right, that's a dangerous place to be in if your numbers are wrong.
Right. That's totally true.
Well, that's awesome, man. So how did you first get into real estate investing then? Was that a recent thing? You always wanted to do it? What was kind of the first exposure for you?
So back in 2013, my now wife, she moved out to Virginia with me, and I was renting an apartment. And I was just more about renting and spending money, having fun. And she was like, wait, we should look at buying something. We should, see how much our mortgage would be compared to what we're renting. So then we looked at our first house. We bought our first house, and since then we've bought as we've moved and just kind of built the portfolio up, exchanged a few properties. So that's really how it started, though. I wasn't really keen on it per se in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even really know what a VA loan was. She kind of educated me on it. So the first condo we bought was zero down, low interest rate VA.
Such an awesome tool for those that have earned that.
It really is. It was a great resource. I've actually used it twice, and it's been really beneficial.
That's cool. So it's just kind of buying a house primary and then moving, but instead of selling it, you held on to it. And you did that a couple times, and that kind of when did it click that it's like, whoa, real estate is like really more powerful than I've realized. I want to go in hardcore. And I mean, obviously you're doing commercial real estate, multi-million-dollar deals, stuff like that. Where did it click, and how's that transition?
Yeah, so I'd say it clicked. That first condo we bought in Virginia, we held on to it for about 5 years. And the whole time we held on to it, so we lived in it for a year, moved to the West Coast. And when we were renting it, it was actually negative. So every month we were carrying it. And we had
Mm-hmm.
this mentality like, okay, if we carry it, eventually we're going to build up enough equity, we can sell it and go into something that's going to actually make us money. And that's exactly what we did. We went in with zero down, right? And I think it was year 6, we did our first 1031 exchange, sold it, and we bought a little 6-unit apartment building in southern Indiana. And we were
Nice.
cash flowing almost $1,800 a month. And the NOI has increased dramatically, so the value's gone up because it's a multifamily building. And that's when we kind of saw like, okay, there's a difference between holding on to an asset forever and then holding it, exchanging it, getting something bigger, and kind of moving your
Mm-hmm.
money smartly. And that's, to me, is really the power of real estate. And you can move it and scale and buy something different. Kind of when the market moves, you can buy a different asset class. I mean, you have a lot of freedom too.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was first doing real estate, and a lot of people are in this boat, they've sold real estate then and regretted it, right? Like, oh, they had this house and they sold, like, oh my gosh, if I'd held that, it'd been worth this much or this much. Even not investors, just everybody's kind of been through that. And I had this rule when I started getting into real estate. I was okay, I'm never gonna sell. Never sell your assets. Everybody regrets it. Never sell your assets. Never. Everybody regrets it. And that was kind of my vibe for a while. But the more I studied and learned and understood, I made a new rule, which any of my students, they all know this rule. I've drilled in their heads pretty hard, but some of the listeners have probably heard it too, that you don't ever sell an asset for money, you trade it for better assets.
Right.
So I kind of pivoted that rule because of what you're talking about. I was like, man, if you can take this thing that's losing money here, but it has so much equity, if I can pivot that into a better asset, don't just sell it and go, oh, yay, we got a couple $100,000 and then blow it all and regret losing the house. You take that, roll it, like you said, a 1031 tax deferred, advantage into a much better property than now cash flowing that can even go up even more in value, right?
Right.
That's such a powerful strategy that I think a lot of beginners maybe forget because it's intimidating to have to go bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, oh, now I'm doing something I'm not comfortable with. How did you deal with that aspect of it? I mean, going from like a townhome to a 6-unit apartment complex, like that's not the same thing. And now you're doing, like you said, NOI and commercial stuff, which we want to chat about. But like, that's quite the jump. How'd you feel comfortable doing that?
It was a jump. I agree. It took us a while. We did a lot of reading, a lot of listening to podcasts, audiobooks, consuming content. And we were still like, I don't know, is this right? Is it going to work out? The timing with the 1031 exchange. We were very scared, intimidated. And then, I don't know, one day we probably just woke up and looked at each other like, what are we doing? We've been doing this for a year now. Let's go for it. And we
What year
did.
was
We did
that?
it. That was, so we did that sale in, it was 2018.
Okay, cool.
2018 we did that sale, and we just finally did it. And once we did it the first time, we got through the process, found that building, went through the closing, and got the new property manager up to speed. Kind of went through the process, bringing up a new project, new property, and then it didn't feel uncomfortable. Just doing it that first time, we heard that a lot. Once you do it once and you feel more comfortable, you can move forward, and that was true for us. Once we went through it, we felt like we understood it enough to keep going and do it again.
That's cool. What would you say were some of the biggest differences and maybe surprises, but maybe you'd already researched enough that you weren't blindsided, but maybe some of the surprises or biggest differences, good or bad, or both, that you experienced going from, the residential kind of 4-unit less to the commercial stuff?
The lending and underwriting was pretty not difficult, but there was a lot of scrutiny involved. We ended up getting connected. Funny story. We connected with someone on Instagram that was putting out content. He connected us with his lender out in the Midwest. So thankfully that was really good. We found this lender, but still, the debt coverage ratio coming up with all these different. They had a lot of different things. They had to go out and view the property. They had to do this study and that study and make sure the roof wasn't too old. And they had a lot more scrutiny on the property and the deal too. We brought him a few deals, and he kind of joked in our face like, this, we can't lend on this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at these, and look at these expenses. They're too high. So there was just new things like that we had to learn along the way. But it's definitely helped us now when we look at deals now. we kind of know what they're looking for. But the first timer, that was intimidating.
It's kind of cool, and I've mentioned this before, but how the underwriters or the lender kind of becomes your safety net because they're like, I'm not going to do this if it's a bad deal, which means you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that one either. It's like, that's great. It's like if they're willing to do it, it makes you feel a lot comfortable, in today's world. It wasn't like that back in 2008, and that's why everybody got screwed is the lenders would do anything. They're like, it's up to you, sucker. And
Right.
people are like, if you'll give me the money, I'll do anything. And it was just created this mess. But now the lenders are so tight and strict that if they'll do it, you're probably pretty safe.
Right. That's true. And when we look at various properties here and there and kind of think about creative ways to use a piece of land when we talk to a lender, and sometimes they say, no, it's not the best. Sometimes they get really excited, like, okay, well, they know, right? So if we are bringing them this idea and they think it's good and our pro forma is looking good, it kind of gives you peace of mind. For sure.
That's awesome. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but with commercial lenders, it's not like when you go do a house hack or you're trying to buy something, you go, hey, what can I get pre-qualified for? You can buy a $500,000 home, you go buy that home, wherever. With commercial, you don't go get pre-qualified necessarily. It's more like you bring an asset to them and then they dive into it together and decide between you and the asset and the whole picture if they feel comfortable moving forward. Is that correct?
That's correct. I know there's different ways you can use other people's money and seller finance. We've always used our own funds, so it's always been we have kind of a buy box. Like, okay, we know we're going to have X amount for down payments, so our price points in a certain range. But yeah, we bring it to them, and as long as the financials look good and it'll hit that debt coverage, whatever they're looking for. Some lenders don't lend in all markets. You have to stick to a bigger sub market. But that's true. They do a lot of that for you.
That's cool. So you didn't stop there though, right? So let's kind of fast forward to your portfolio. So you go from a couple single family primary residences, you 1031, you roll that into a 6 unit. So about small of a multifamily, commercial as you can get almost. Then what was the next step after that?
So we moved from there. We moved to San Diego. We bought another house as we moved there. That was a new construction single family house. We actually still have that one as a rental. So kind of fast forwarding. And then the next commercial building we purchased was another new construction. So we've liked the new construction approach. We try to buy as we've moved. We've tried to buy in some sort of new development in like the newer phases. They're released in phases. And then if you buy in early, they kind of go up every phase, and then it's almost guaranteed appreciation. Anyways, we bought this townhome, lived in it for a year, moved out, rented it for a year. We put about $60K into that one, and then we ended up 1031 exchanging that one 2 years ago into a double net medical office building. So this was like middle end of COVID. And we're doing this 1031. We have a lot of cash coming out of it. We're like, okay, what asset do we want to buy? Multifamily was really squeezed. There was a lot of competition.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, okay, well, medical office, either virtual or in person, is going to grow. And so we bought that building, and it's a double net. There's an HOA, and they cover basically all repairs, all maintenance, and so it was really super hands off. And that one.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go on.
That one, that's almost $3,000 a month in true passive cash flow, and we actually had to carry that house almost $400 a month when we moved out for that same reason. We're going to hold it, for a year, get it on our tax returns, and then 1031 it. And it worked out well, even though we were negative for about a year.
Man, I love that. And obviously we always advise students to try to cash flow property. So many people, when they're too over leveraged, especially if you're trying to do anything at scale, you're buying one after another, and you're losing money on all of them. That's how a lot of people back in 2008 got stuck. But I also tell students that I'm like, look, doing anything is probably going to be better than doing nothing. You know what I mean? And if you can buy the asset, as long as you don't lose it, like I said, you're able to cover that, it's going to be a win in the long run, even if you're losing money. And sometimes people sit on the sidelines so long because oh, well, I'm going to lose 100 or $200 a month. It's like, who cares if that thing's going to be worth a couple 100,000 more? Take the loss, find a way to cover it. And that's not like the ideal way to scale, but like, I think this is such a perfect example of like, doing it is so much better than not doing it, because it will go up in value and you will be able to leverage that into something bigger. And that's really cool that you guys not only did it, but you foresaw that and you were like consciously choosing, hey, we know we'll lose this money for a while, but we got to live in a home we actually enjoyed, not a dump, a really nice new build that maybe the purchase to rent ratio isn't ideal for an investment, but we'll just bridge the gap until we 1031 it into something bigger. Like, what an awesome strategy, especially it's like a lifestyle strategy too. You're not living in the side duplex and hating your life for a year, which is fine. I've done that too, but I like, when you've got a good W-2 job, you have the cash flow to cover it, might as well be comfortable. You're going to get a better appreciation out of that asset anyway.
Right. And, with the kids too, I mean, we've always talked like, oh, what if we just bought a fourplex that had maybe one bigger unit and kind of hack into it, but it never really made sense for us. And that's what we're doing now. We're in the house we moved to a couple of years ago, and we're probably going to stay here another year and probably move to a bigger home and keep this one again and kind of exchange it down the road and just keep going for a little while.
And it's funny because we talk a lot about cash flow versus appreciation. And I say, when you're looking at the appreciation play, I say go buy the nicest thing you can possibly qualify for, that you can afford, that you can cover the gap on. Because like I say, $1 million home going up 20%, 50%, 100% is a lot more than a $200,000 home going up that much. You know what I mean? Right. You just make a lot more money, which means you can leverage that into big plays. Now, I really want to talk about, and what you explained to me and the listeners, what a triple net lease is, a double net lease is, how that works, and how you can cash flow so well on those. I've heard a lot of, my impression was kind of like the triple net leases sometimes are a little more break even, but obviously you're cash flowing awesome. But what's the difference between a double net lease, a triple net lease, and what are those?
So disclaimer, we bought at good time. The rates were really low. So that helped a lot.
Sure.
Triple net. So a triple net is typically a really large, a large tenant. You see like the Walgreens or Home Depot, these big buildings with big tenants who have a lot of space across the country. And the triple net, they basically pay for everything. They pay for the maintenance on the building. They pay for your taxes. They pay for your insurance. So you'll get a rent check, and they basically cover all the expenses. The double net is a little different. Ours is kind of a quasi because it's about a 5,000 square foot medical office space. The tenant covers basically all repairs, all maintenance inside the walls. The community, it's like a community of medical office buildings.
Okay.
The HOA covers everything else: parking lot, roof, HVAC. It's steep, it's almost $800 a month, but they cover a lot of it. So then for us, right, we're basically hands off like a triple net, because all we have to do is pay our mortgage and property taxes and insurance, and everything else is covered. And when we were purchasing that property, there was only a 3-year lease left, and our lender, like you said, was really skeptical. He's like, "That's not long enough.
Like,
You've got to."
Yeah, what's going to happen at the end of the 3 years?
We're almost to today, right? Interest rates. I mean, so they made a good move, and they forced us to negotiate, and we got a 15-year lease out of it with all the extensions. So it's really a perfect setup, and there's escalation, so every year it goes up. I think it's 3 or 4%, so it's pretty good. So those are the differences. Really, the triple net is a true hands off, where it covers most everything, and then the double net, like I call ours a double net. It's a little different because it has the HOA involved.
Yeah, which is nice because it makes it kind of removes the biggest burden you would have had on a normal double net. That's what. How did you feel confident in knowing? So there was already people in it, and they already had a lease paying a certain amount, so you could just kind of run the numbers like you would a normal residential one and see, hey, this cash flows. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Right. And then you're able to negotiate a longer contract.
Yeah, we were talking to the broker, and we told them, hey, look, the lenders, they don't like the 3-year lease. We got to start negotiating before we even close? And she said, okay, well, once we submit an LOI and it's accepted, we could start talking about that. So it was a little risky. The lender kind of stuck their foot out a little bit, and the broker did too, but it ended up working out.
That's so cool. And LOI is that letter of intent, right?
It is correct. So just
Okay.
basic terms, right? Laying out, uh, some due diligence items and basic terms of the deal.
That's super cool. And so these lenders that are doing these commercial lending for you, are these big, national lenders, or these local small ones? Where have you found the most success, and what do you like about them?
So prior to so everything up to that double net building was big national lenders, and now we're currently getting ready to list that San Diego property and do another exchange,
Mm,
and we're looking and talking to small banks only, community banks, because the big ones are they're either not lending on what we're looking to do, or they want 40-50% down, and it's just it's changed. The environment's changed quite a bit.
sure.
And the smaller banks are willing, they know the market specifically, the town you're looking in, and they're willing to kind of give leeway here and there if you have a good plan. I've written up a few plans now and submitted to local banks, and they're like, okay, this makes sense. We can make a deal work.
Yeah, there's a lot of power when the bank is in the community that you're buying in. Because, like I say, they know it more intimately. I remember I was trying to get lending on a mobile home park, and I got denied by so many lenders because it's this little small dumpy park and in the middle of nowhere. But a local bank there, they're like, oh, yeah, we know that area. Like, we know it'll cash flow. Like, we know the tenants. Like, sure. Like, they didn't even do any due diligence. They were just like, yeah, we'll do it.
Right.
And it's like,
True.
they know it so much intimately, so their risk mitigation is like already done.
Right. And I found even, I've submitted, like I said, a couple ideas, and one of the banks came back and said, well, if you're looking to do this, you should find a piece of land on the other side of town, because the other side of town's closer to this, it's better for this. And, okay, they're almost willing to help more too, because they have an incentive to lend to you. It'll bring more investors into the area as well.
So let's talk about it. So the next deals you're doing, are you looking for more double or triple net leases? It sounds like you're doing some land development deals or land leasing, or what are you doing with land?
So we're looking at doing a small development project, kind of Northwest U.S. So the other properties are in Indiana. This one's we're looking at the Northwest U.S. to do a development outside of a national park, to do kind of a glamp ground, tiny home, small development with some minor amenities, make it kind of hands off. So it's a little multifamily, the double net, but we're just kind of going with the market. I mean, we're looking at apartment deals right now, and they really just don't make much money unless you're putting a lot of money down. The cash flow is just not there like it was a couple of years ago. And we're looking at something we can kind of develop, and it'll appreciate as popularity grows with the national park and people visit. More money gets poured in by the local community and government. So we're trying to just play it on both sides.
That's cool. Yeah, you definitely have no fear of kind of stepping into the next thing, it sounds like, because running a small, short-term rental is so different than a triple net lease, which is so different than a single family, but it seems like you don't have a problem just pivoting and just going to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's been fun and a learning experience along the way. And our goal, my wife and I, we want to eventually do some bigger developments. So this is kind of would be almost like a stepping stone. And then, like you said, we can exchange those properties we've purchased in the past, as they appreciate and NOI grows, we can exchange them into those bigger projects.
Yeah, why don't you explain for the listeners what NOI is and how powerful it is to be able to, manually change that to up the value of a property, because that's unique to commercial compared to how they evaluate the value of a residential property. Maybe break that down for us.
Right. So your net operating income. So you receive rents, say on our 6-unit building, right? We receive all of our rents in, and then you subtract out all your expenses. For us, we don't have too many. A lot of things are separately metered, but we have property management, our insurance, taxes, lawn care. We have things we have to to take out of that. And that gives your NOI, which eventually you subtract out your mortgage. But your NOI is the metric that in the commercial space, they value your property off of based off your cap rate. It's just a formula. And as you increase that number, typically your value will go up. And for us, like when we acquired that apartment building, rents were in, I believe, like the mid fives, and we've bumped almost every single unit up to just under 700, I think 695. We're also getting kickback for water. Um, so we've, increased rents across the board. We have a payback for water, so that increases your NOI, which increases your property value.
Yeah, it's so cool because it's like there's two ways to do it, right? You can either lower the expenses, where it's like, oh, you find better management, you get better utilities or whatever, figure out a way to lower your expenses on it, or you raise the actual profits or income from it, like raising rents, find a place to rent storage or whatever it is, charge for utilities. If you can raise the income, lower the expenses, then the net operating income is such a more attractive number. And then all of a sudden your thing's worth more, which is funny because in residential, if you have a $300,000 home and you're renting it for $2,000 or $2,500, the value of the home's the exact same, even though you're making, you go in and, make $500 more and make it more energy efficient. The utilities go down. The value of the home doesn't change one bit.
Right.
But with commercial, it does, which is a really powerful thing to be able to grow some big wealth really quite quickly, relatively. That again, like I said, then you can roll that into an even bigger asset if you want to.
Right. Yeah. And the difference, you could force the appreciation, like the rents or the market. If you buy in a good market, if you bought in Nashville 10 years ago, just your property value will increase over time. But yeah, there's a lot of good ways to do it.
Yeah, commercial is exciting. I think a lot of people have it on their radar, but they're intimidated by it. The underwriting is heavier, right? It's not just like, oh, well, what's the cost of a roof? It's like there's pavement and driveways and management and these huge AC and heating cooling units for a 20, 30, 50, 100 home. Like it's a lot more intimidating. What advice would you have to somebody who feels like, oh man, like I'm comfortable in the residential space, but going into that commercial stuff, like I just don't feel confident I could underwrite it safely, and I would get myself in a bind. What advice would you give them?
Right. So besides, reading books and consuming stuff on the internet, content, et cetera, what helped me a lot was starting to talk to brokers even before we were ready to exchange and have a conversation with the broker and be honest. Look, we're new. We're trying to figure this out. Let's talk through things. And a couple of them sent me their calculators, spreadsheets. Like, this is how we look at it. You can look for this. This is the typical price points, cap rates, and you just start having conversations, and then you pick up on a lot. They give you tips to go look up and research. And for us, that got us pretty comfortable when we're talking to the brokers, had a couple conversations with lenders, and just kind of understanding the environment. Because when you buy your first primary residence, right, you do that. You talk to the lender, you talk to a real estate agent, talk to multiple lenders, you do all that, and then just kind of doing the same thing in the commercial space was very helpful.
I love that. I think there's so much power in taking action and doing stuff. It's like you can study to learn the language, you can study to learn like the basic feel of the ground and whatnot. But at some point it's all theory and it's all intimidating until you're actually taking the action. Then it has like an applicable place to go in your brain. It's like, oh, now I get it. And this is the things I was missing. But without the action, it's really hard to feel comfortable.
Very true. That's very true.
That's awesome, man. So you've done some pretty cool stuff. Then you've bought quite a bit of residential, commercial. Sounds like you just keep moving it up. What's kind of the next big goals? Then you said you want to start getting into developments long term, or what's kind of your driving force?
Driving force, for us is the next big project. We're going to exchange that house in San Diego. We're going to hopefully we actually just got outbid on a piece of land. Pretty bummed about that. But we're still looking. It'll work out, and then that ties into consistency. I think that's something, I've done on and off, and you can apply it to any metric, whether it's real estate, fitness, your personal life, being a father, whatever it is, and being consistent. So for us, we've got some pretty stable assets. We want to exchange this property, so let's stay focused. It's on the market. Get it sold. Find the next property. Stay focused, and just doing that every day, consistent, and you'll hit the next the next goal eventually. Um, but it's a balancing act too for us. Going too hard in one direction, you got to balance it all and just stay consistent in all aspects.
I think that's so true. I've noticed that in myself and a lot of people I've talked to, that's like they find that deal when they're putting in a lot of offers, right? It's not like it could have been one offer that there's only one offer that is the one that works, but it's never when you just throw out one. It's always like when you've looked at 5 or 10, and then it's like then you find that one, that consistency, like taking action, and then the pieces come together. It's really hard if you're just once in a while throwing out a Hail Mary to have very much ever work out.
Right. Totally true. I mean, long story short, like a year ago, I was like, oh, okay, how do we add more income, right? So we could funnel it to buy more real estate. It's like, okay, let's make an e-commerce store. And, it was the consistency lacked the first 6 months. I was probably working it for a week and I'd stop and work and stop and nothing happened. And then recently it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I dedicated hours every day, and it's finally launched, product out the door. It's like you just put in the time, you have a goal, and it'll probably come to fruition. You just got to stay focused.
Yeah, it's amazing how much when you have energy directed at something consistently, that like results will come. You'll find a way. Like you're creative, you'll find a way. But if the focus isn't there, it's crazy. Um, Well, that's cool. Have you had any big kind of mistakes or failures, or we'll just call them learning lessons or whatever along the way? Because obviously a lot of people are scared of, hurting themselves financially and getting in a bind. Have you ever had any failures along the way that you've overcome and learned anything from?
I think, failures in the moment, what we saw as a failure definitely was buying a house and then having to move out of it, and it not cash flowing and putting a little bit of financial burden on us, whatever we had to
Sure.
do to cover that, and that was definitely a failure at first, because 6, 7, 8 years ago our W-2s, our salaries weren't as high, things, we didn't have other passive income coming in, so that was a failure. But
Yeah, you're like, oh, we're losing money on this thing every month. We're not even living
right,
in it. Like, what a
right, and then
stressor.
something breaks, and that takes another month's worth of those dollars you got to spend. I mean, it was rough and definitely stressful, but learning from that and kind of be like, okay, there's a game plan. So when you shift it's another like mindset exercise. You shift to be like, okay, we're doing this with an intention. It's not like it's unintentional. Now we're going to do it for a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and we have a plan to do X. And that really helped kind of shift it from a failure to something we can kind of learn from. And since then, we've tried, when we buy a primary, we try to put a little thought behind it. Like, okay, if we buy this, our mortgage is whatever it is, 3,000-4,000. The rents are going to cover it if we do move out. So at least we're still in the same game of like the appreciation play for real estate specifically, but we don't have to worry about that financial part of it for the rents and the mortgage.
That's awesome. I think that's a really great example because it's like, yeah, it felt like a failure at the moment, but as the listeners have already heard, like what you did with those was like awesome. Like
Right.
it was your superpower to be able to go big. And it's like, man, it's funny that in the moment something can feel so heavy, so stressful, maybe like a mistake, like, "Ah, I think we screwed up. I don't think we're doing this right."
Right.
And then it comes out the other end and it's like, set you up. You're getting thousands and thousands of dollars of cash flow. You said that double net lease one's like 3,000 itself, and
Right.
like almost completely passive.
Right.
Which is
Right.
so cool.
Right.
That'll make up for those couple lost year of income pretty quick. Not to mention the value of it's probably just gone up so much if you bought before 2020. It's like
Right.
that's great.
Right.
That's awesome, man. Well, sweet. Well, I mean, do you have any other kind of guiding principles or habits that have served you well on in and outside of real estate that you could kind of share before we move into our final questions?
let's see, I mean, consistency, taking action. I mean, you hear it all the time. It's like, regurgitated throughout social media or books, but it's just so true. I mean, being able to know what you want to do, think about it smartly, and then just take an action and a step forward. And even one little step a day, eventually turns into, um, your end result. If you're trying to put a deal together, you want to buy a piece of property, um, you know, connecting with a broker one day, talking to an agent the next day, running the numbers the next day, they kind of compound and compile on each other. Um, and then you end up where you want to go. When my wife and I look back at like our W-2 careers, we had like 5-7 year vision plans of where we want to be, and both of us fulfilled those 100%. And it's because we planned it out, and we've learned to do that in real estate. At first we weren't doing it, and now it's okay. You plan it out, and you take those action steps, and you will get there if you stay consistent and focused.
I love it, man. I love it. So, kind of a pivot side note, you're a TV star now. So now we're recording this in mid-August. It'll probably be released sometime in September. Now you were on a TV show on the History Channel, right? It was the Ultimate Marksman. Is that what it was called?
It is
Ultimate Marksman Mountain Man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, and that's being released next month. Tell us a little bit about that. That's awesome.
So this is the second season. First season came out last year. It's actually currently streaming, I believe, on Amazon, some other platforms. But it's a competition show based around the mountain men era of the 1800s, and different firearms used, kind of survival methods. There's a $10,000 cash prize, 4 different competitors. It was filmed on a big ranch in this beautiful location. So it's just an awesome competition in shooting these old style firearms in various situations. And it was just a lot of fun. Still talk to the people that I filmed it with today. It was just a
That's
really
awesome.
time. Yeah, it's airing next month.
So there's just 4 competitors, and you were one of them.
I was one of them. So I think there's 4 total seasons. This will be season 2. So I'll be one of the 4 competing.
That's exciting. Well, I guess you can't, no spoiler alerts. Don't tell us who won, but hopefully it was you. That's super exciting, though. That's cool. So you said that it's going to be on what platform could we catch it?
I know it'll stream on History, and then afterwards they're on streaming services. Anywhere you can get History Channel. I think Prime has
Cool.
it as well. So you can
That'd be awesome.
on Prime.
All right. Well, so probably it'll be released by the time this podcast is released. So everybody go check it out. The Ultimate Marksman Mountain Man. You go see Nino just killing it like a ancient warrior.
Yeah.
So that's great, man. Well, we love it. We're gonna dive into our final 4 questions that we ask every guest. Before we do that, what's the best way for people to reach out to you or follow you if you want followers, or just a way to contact you if people want to learn more about what you're doing or want to follow you, or maybe do some sort of partnerships or whatever? Is there a way people can kind of keep in touch with you?
Yeah, that'd be great. My Instagram is at Neendav, Neendav. I'm not the most active person on there, but I definitely go on and look around. But I'd love to connect with anyone. If you have any questions, love helping people out.
Awesome. And we'll definitely put the handle in the show notes so people can follow you if they want to. All right. Well, we'll dive into it without any further ado. The final 4. All right. So Nino, number 1, what is a non-real estate related bucket list item you've recently checked off or you're excited to check off next?
So, where we met. And so last month we went to, I guess it was more than a month ago now. So in the month of June, my family and I, we spent a whole month in Hawaii, in Maui. And that's
where we met. Yeah, that was fun.
And that's been, a dream of ours, my wife and I's, for a long time. We honeymooned there. We've vacationed there almost every year. We just love it. And having the kids, we're like, we've got to take the kids there and just spend a month, not work, just hang out. And we did it. And it was, expensive and hard travel. And, there was tough times, but it was the best experience, we've had. in a long time, and just
It's
totally
awesome.
focusing on family. And that was a big, big bucket list item.
That's cool. You plan on doing something like that again in another location? Go do like the month away with the family, make that a regular thing?
Yeah, we're getting our passports now. I think next year we're going to try to do Sicily. I'm Sicilian, and I've been to
Ooh,
Italy a
okay.
bunch. Yeah, and we're just
That would be epic. I've been to Italy once and I didn't even want to go. I was like, Europe, like a vacation's the beach. What are you talking about? Old
right,
buildings? But man, I was blown away. Turns out they have water and beaches there too. But
right,
I fell in love. It's amazing. The food's incredible. The people were awesome.
totally,
Yeah, I would love to go back and spend a month or two in Italy.
right.
That's awesome, man. All right, sweet. All right, so next question. What book are you currently reading?
So I'm rereading currently one of my favorites. So Pivot by Adam Merkel. It's a book about basically pivoting from whatever you're doing to something else and recreating. And I've read it a few times. It's the third time now. But I
Hmm.
like reading it. It kind of keeps me motivated and focused. Like I said, we're doing this new exchange. It kind of keeps me focused. Okay, we're pivoting this property. We're going to do something new, and I just like the way it's laid out, and it's motivating for me.
That's really cool. I'm going to inject another question that I don't normally ask, but I want to ask you it seems that you balance a lot of moving things. You've got a W-2, you've got a portfolio of real estate you're managing, you're actively growing that, you've got a wife, a couple of kids. What is your like routine like? Your morning routine, your daily routine? It seems like how do you balance all that? Because it seems like you're quite effective and intentional with each of those realms of your life. What's your routine like?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You know, you have three kids, basically all under five, both working from home. But my wife and I, we get up pretty early. We alternate gym days. We're slowly creating a gym in the garage, and I have a local membership, so we alternate gym days. Um, I love cooking. If you know me, you know I love spending time in the kitchen. So I do a lot of like the cooking cleanup, and that kind of helps around the house quite a bit. Um, and we both share a lot of the responsibilities, managing the kids and taking them places, whether it's doctors drop off, this and that. So we do a lot of that sharing, and we just work together on it, and that's super helpful. Um, and I've done my best, and the kids really come to me for things, and it's just very helpful to have that unity, within the house for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. Power couple. It takes a team, right? That's awesome. All right. So back to our regular scheduled programming. Question number 3: what content or book or podcast, course, YouTube channel, etc., would you recommend people checking out?
So yeah, let's see, we consume quite a bit of stuff. James Daynard on Instagram, if you guys know him, I consume a lot of his content. I really like it. He does a lot of flips and deals and walks through
Mm-hmm.
numbers, and it's just very insightful. That's super helpful. Diary of a CEO is a new podcast my wife and I've, a lot of times she finds stuff. She's kind of more the brains of the operation sometimes. That she finds good podcast things, and then we kind of share it together. Um, that's another podcast we're both uh, listening to pretty actively now, and it's been a shift. I used to go to the gym and just listen to music, and now it's like podcasts and books, and it's like more of a useful time. And
Mm-hmm.
having something on the list like that podcast, having something prepped, ready to go, is always good.
That's cool. So Diary of a CEO. That's cool. I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check that out. And the book was Pivot by Adam what?
Merkel, I think it's Merkel, Merkel.
Adam Raquel. Cool. I want to check those out. Well, that's great, man. Well, last question, then we'll let you get back to your busy life. We appreciate you carving out time for us so we could glean from all your experience. But if you could send a text message out and everybody's phone starts buzzing and ringing and they look down and it's a message from you to everybody in the world, what's it going to say?
I'd say it's just, stay focused to your vision. I mean, whatever that is in any aspect of life, you can apply that. Stay focused to your vision, your family, your kids, your spouse, your real estate, your job, and whatever it is you want to achieve, you stay focused and have that positive reinforcement for yourself. And don't be hard on yourself. I could squeeze that into the text. I mean, that's something I've learned to not do, is don't be hard on yourself. And you make a mistake or something doesn't go right, you keep moving forward. And I think that's powerful if you really think about what it means and kind of take action forward.
I love that. I love it. Yeah. Sometimes we feel like if we're not beating ourselves up, we're not trying hard enough. And it's like, you know what? You can actually be a lot more effective if you're not getting beat up every day, even if it's by yourself. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for being on here. This has been a treat for me. Yeah, I remember meeting you in Maui and we started chatting a little bit. I was like, man, you've done some really cool stuff. We've got to have you on the show. So I'm glad we were able to connect again. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, this is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to take consistent, focused action.